What's the most embarrassing thing you saw someone doing because they thought nobody was watching? I once saw a girl holding an ice cream cone in one hand and her phone in the other, lick the screen of her phone. When we made eye contact and she realized I'd seen it happen, she looked like she was going to die. Working in large corporate parks during the recession, there were lots of huge office spaces with barely any residency. They basically overbuilt these large office parks expecting businesses to fill them up. So it would be like a huge complex with maybe 2 or 3 functioning businesses in them. The best part about this was the fact that you could always find a restroom to take a shit in that nobody ever used. I went to a restroom on a building across from mine that had 0 occupancy. Every time I went over there I never ran into anybody. One day during one of my particularly long sheets, the timer on the lights turned off due to lack of motion. I thought no biggie, so I got up out the stall and attempted to move around so the lights would come on. They weren't coming on, so I ventured further out near the sinks and started moving my hands in a hip hop hooray motion while simultaneously saying hey I hoo just for sheets and giggles. So the lights turn on and I'm still waving for a few seconds afterwards, thinking to myself how silly I must look with my pants and drawers to my ankles in a public bathroom waving my hands in the air. That's when I heard the door close. Somebody had to have walked into that bathroom and saw some businessman with his pants down his ankles waving his hands in the air yelling hey I hoo, and decided to abruptly walk back out. I came back upstairs after leaving for work because I forgot my phone. My dogs thought I was gone for the day and didn't hear me come back up. Walk into living room and my youngest dog is laying on his back and my older dog is standing right in front of young dog's butt sniffing. Not normal dog sniffing, butt sniffs. Deep. Pronounced sniffing as if he was a sommelier trying to determine a wine's country of origin. I laughed and both dogs looked at me in utter fear and embarrassment. Eyes were huge. You could see the shame in their eyes, and one went to the couch and the other went to the bedroom. Neither looked me in the eye when I got home that afternoon. I'm a canoe guide. And being the guide, I'm usually in the back of the canoe, steering. On this particular day, because it was training and I was with a bunch of my co-workers, I was in the front. When I'm in the back, I'll periodically check to see if any plumber's crack is showing by basically feeling my lower back top of my ass crack with my finger. Then readjust my underwear if needed. I'm in the back of the boat, so no one sees that. However, on this day I did it in the front, giving the guy in the back of the boat a full showing of me fingering my ass crack. He promptly said I think that's a back of boat maneuver. Used to go to an old style gym years ago with an open shower setup. I hated to use the shower, but I'd work out before work and I'd have to get up even earlier to work out, then go back home to shower, then turn back around for work. So the gym shower made more sense. One day I was done working out and was heading towards the shower when I hear someone yell, "What the duck are you doing?" I got there in time to see some dude with an erection turning beet red because he got caught jerking off in the public shower. He apologized over and over as he walked out, but you could tell he was mortified. I don't know what he thought could happen doing that in a public shower. Maybe he was excited by the thought. Then once he got caught, felt really stupid. Anyway, that guy was clearly ashamed of himself and I've never seen anyone look more embarrassed. So I am going to have to go with that. I used to deliver newspapers. One Sunday I got the papers extremely early and delivered to a Sunday only customer at around 3 AM. When it's this early, I always lift my paper up and smile so customers don't think I'm there to rob them. As I approach this house, I notice movement inside. Cue the smile and raise newspaper as I witnessed a shirtless, middle-aged man with a large pot belly rubbing his belly vigorously. I approach, smile and paper in hand. He notices me and runs out of the room. I'm thinking, no dude, don't do your thing. I'm just a paper boy. Don't let me dictate how you live your life. He cancelled the next week. We had a house guest staying with us for several days. On the second day I came home early from work and found him going through my SO's drawers. He had no idea he was being observed. But later I took him aside and told him that it was time for him to go. that we needed our privacy. I saw an old man jerking off underneath his table at a New Orleans strip club. I didn't say anything because it took him about 20 seconds. And I was so drunk that I only had one eye open. There's different rules in New Orleans after midnight. This might sound a bit depressing. But back in high school we had a teacher who was, let's just say, a bit out of touch. She's not smart, to put it nicely. And we suspected that she might be affected with schizophrenia. Anyway, being high schoolers, a lot of the kids that had her class were assholes. They'd take advantage of her obliviousness and did pranks on her, some of them harmless. But they poked fun at how slow she was. These pranks ranged from submitting the same assignment 3 to 4 times, leaving class early, to all out fainting and faking a seizure. They were assholes. Some of them were. At least. One of the saddest moments from her was one of the kids caught her by herself in the class storeroom talking to herself. She was trying to prep herself up for the morning class and apparently she was saying things like, "You can do it, Beth. You can do it." When I heard this being told, the kid was laughing as he said it and mocking her. Of course. But damn. It was depressing. Schizophrenia. Dementia. I don't know. But making fun of people who are mentally ill. That's just not right. Edit, I've changed her name in the story. It was when I was around 12, so I guess yeah, can't judge another 12-year-old too much. But we were at day camp and I look over and one of the kids in our group is in the corner just playing with his sack without a care in the world. I use Duolingo to practice my Spanish while waiting for the bus each morning. When I'm alone, I like to say each question and answer aloud to practice my pronunciation as well. One day as I waited for the bus, a group of people gathered behind me without me noticing. I had headphones on and practiced each sentence out loud as I worked through my day's Spanish activities. When the bus finally came and I pulled off my headphones, I realized there were 6 or 7 strangers behind me. All had been awkwardly listening to me speak Spanish to myself for 5 minutes. I felt so embarrassed. I once purchased 6 toys online including nail beads online. I came home to find the parcel containing these items open sitting on my bed with a note from my mum saying sorry. Thought it was my parcel. The shame was unbearable and I still cringe when I think about it. I tried to deflect by texting her to ask if she had any wrapping paper I could use for the joke present I bought for my friend's 21st. Yug. Oh god. It was me. I wore a new dress at work with a really full skirt. I was in the bathroom all alone and grabbed the sides of my skirt to swish it back and forth and twirled and swished and twirled. Imagine a frumpy middle-aged woman going full on Disney princess. In walked the deputy superintendent. Instant mortification. I avoid her like the plague now. The very first time my girlfriend ever came to my house we decided to watch Lord of the Rings. She had never seen it before and was excited to watch it. Anyway, she was laying down on my bed with legs pointed towards the ceiling and butt up against the wall. Kind of like an L shape. So during one of the tense scenes, IDK which, I do the whole grab her sides and go RAGHH thing. She then proceeded to let the loudest and longest fart I'd ever heard anyone release. And because her ass was against the wall it reverberated and made it seem even louder. I just burst out laughing for like 5 minutes straight. And she is so embarrassed she starts crying. It was the cutest thing I've ever seen. We're still together and have a 2-year-old now. One day I decide to take a walk to this park near my house. I take my book. A couple of joints. Good way to kill a summer's evening. Right? So I go and find my favorite tree and climb up to a comfy position high up in the branches. Some guy is walking in the park and well clearly nature called. Without noticing me sat above him in the tree. He pulls down his pants and does a massive stinking turd. Pulls up his pants without wiping and walks off as if it's all cool. So I'm sat there, having seen everything. And now I have to climb down from a tree with a massive man turd right where I was going to climb down. Still a traumatic memory to this day. I was walking downtown with a buddy of mine, just casually chatting, and I stopped to light a smoke. While we were stopped, my friend started adjusting his hair, using his reflection in the tinted window of the glasses store we were right beside. As soon as I looked up at him, from my angle, I could clearly see that the front counter of the glasses store was like 6 feet behind the window where my buddy was looking. It was pointed directly at him, and both of the girls at the counter were just staring, perplexed looks and all, while he appeared to stare directly back at them, still adjusting and checking himself out. So I obviously just watched and let this go on for another 30 seconds until my friend started to walk away, at which point I told him to look through the window. So he immediately saw the two girls he'd been staring at for the last minute. They both waved and laughed, and my friend awkwardly waved back and then looked straight at his shoes and briskly walked away. Was this odd guy in my school who'd spit onto his hands and wiped down his leg hair. Not my story, but my mum's. My sister had requested a cake from a specific shop that we'd never been to before, and mum went in to order it. The kitchen was visible from the front of the shop, and one of the workers was icing a cake. He licked the spatula and continued dicing. Mum saw everything. She still ordered a cake from that shop, and we ate it. I used to work in a grocery store in the photo lab, back when developing film was still a thing. The photo lab was on the second level with all glass walls so I could see out over the entire store. When it wasn't busy, I would just sit there and watch the people in the aisle. You know, all the things you do in an aisle when you're the only one there? I saw it. Pick your nose? Saw that. Pick your wedgie? Saw that too. Break out into dance? Yep. Edit, you grape jelly Samish, my socks have officially been blown. I have never been so turned on in my life. Take me. Ugh, okay. So basically there was a lot of construction going on in our house, and one fine morning, I forgot to lock the ducking door before bathing. My back was towards the wall, but there was a glass vase by which I could see the scene behind. One of the workers accidentally got in and froze. During this time I had the option of A. Pretending I did not see him, B. Shrieking for good God. I went with option A because my mom would have pretty much fired the poor guy who accidentally saw her daughter's butt. But he literally just stood there for 30 frozen horrific seconds before running the duck away. If you think that was awkward, imagine the guy working on our house and my room for a week after this. He couldn't look at me. I would constantly have a smile grimace hybrid on my face when I'd see him. And on the third last day when we crossed each other and he gave me finger gums before scampering away like he'd seen an octopus with the face of James Franco. I have a lovely elderly neighbor across the way who tends her garden almost daily. She is sweet as can be, and doesn't bother a fly. Our houses are pretty far apart. I'm not a good judge of distances, but it's far enough that she feels concealed. When I sit on my front porch, I can see her clear as day wherever she is in her yard. But she can't see me because of the arrangement of plants between us and my slightly higher elevation. She always adjusts herself. Like overtly. She has a routine every time she stands up and moves. From kneeling on a planting cushion, she stands up, pulls off her garden gloves, does a little wiggle shake, jams her entire hand down the back of her pants and evacuates a wedge, pulls her bra strap down where it rode up in the back, scoops each tit back into place, and moves down to a new spot to garden. She repeats this maybe 25 times before she calls it a day. I sit outside and smoke a bowl and watch her, and it delights the hell out of me, in a she's a cute, funny old lady way. Not a sexual way. Just to be clear. I was on family vacation to Hawaii when I was 9. For some reason, I didn't think anyone in the busy resort would notice me trying to stick my big dig into one of the hot tub's water jets. Every summer my friends and I go to a water park. As we are adults, we often like to drink while we're at the water park. So one summer we were sitting in the bar area that the water park had set up enjoying overpriced beer. There was a woman sitting at a picnic table just below the balcony of the bar. She slides back so that her rear end is hanging over the bench and just pees right there on the AstroTurf while still chatting with her friends. She thought that no one had seen her and that she had gotten away with it. But we saw and thought it was absolutely disgusting. Okay, so back when I was still living with mom, she had one of her friends up for the week with her son. There wasn't enough room in the house for them to stay inside, so they decided to camp out in the backyard. Now I was working construction at the time and was up pretty early to get ready. The one morning while I was putting my lunch together, I looked out the kitchen window to see my mom's friend squatting over a plastic bag taking a sheet in it right there in the open. One of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. And then she proceeds to walk inside with her bag of fresh sheet to get rid of it and stops dead in her tracks when she realizes that I'm up to this day. I don't understand why, if her plan was to come inside to get rid of it, why she didn't just walk inside and use the fully functional toilet and just cut out squatting over a plastic bag in the middle of a field. I do freelance work at sports events. One time, between setup and the time the game started, I was standing at the top of a hill that leads up to the building. I looked around to make sure nobody was there. Then I laid down and rolled down that ducker. It was super steep. And it was awesome. I got up, brushed myself off, and went back inside to work. Found out the next week that my boss had seen me and had told everybody on the crew. Joy. A former co-worker had bad acne all over his face and neck. While I was sitting in my forklift waiting for pallets to come up the line, I watched him pop a pimple on his neck and eat it. Ducking horrifying. I was sitting in a McDrive parking lot at night with my GF in her car. Some guy walked up to take a piss in the bushes next to us. Not seeing us sitting there, he proceeds to take out his earthworm Jim to do his business, and I honked as soon as I saw piss. He pissed on his pants and shoes and walked away in shame. My girlfriend laughed hysterically and still does when I remind her of this. At parties I would often dedicate myself a look in the mirror with a smile for a confidence boost. But this one time there was another guy doing the exact same thing. Raising his eyebrow and smooching at himself. There was a silent agreement not to talk about it. I still wonder if he remembers. When I was a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, time spent in the bathroom was an opportunity to read books or just have a moment of quiet contemplation. One time during one of my extended toilet sessions, I got the bright idea to use the toilet paper to make a Ninja Turtles style mask for myself. No sooner had I torn the eye holes and wrapped it around my head. The door opens and my dad walks in. We make awkward eye contact for what felt like minutes. And then, without a word being spoken, he slowly backed out and closed the door. I don't know why it was so embarrassing to me, but I still remember the whole scene quite clearly, and that was 20+ years ago. Edit. Gee whiz, look at all them updates. Thanks for the gold too. Who knew a moment from my childhood would get me fake internet points in the future? The door wasn't locked because my parents owned an old Victorian which didn't have locks on any of the interior doors. Gotta keep your head on a swivel. I was in a meeting in my client's boardroom. The boardroom was at ground level and the exterior glass was mirrored on the outside but see-through from inside. In the middle of the meeting, some sketchy looking dude comes over and starts picking his teeth in the mirror. Then he looks left, looks right, sees he has privacy. So he whips out his junk and starts inspecting it in the mirror. He then started trying to pop big dick pimples or something. Walked over to the glass and gave a little rap on the window in front of him. He put his junk away and moved on. Edit. Added exterior to clarify this was an exterior window with a probably homeless dude on the outside of the glass. Oblivious to the inside of the glass. One day at work I had to fart really bad. This wasn't a silent fart I could crank out at my desk and blame on my geriatric coworker. I was legitimately afraid of blowing a hole in the back of my jeans. I got up and penguin walked out the door, clenching my sphincter tightly. In the hall, I realized things were happening and I wouldn't make it into the restroom to let this monster out safely. I looked around and saw there was nobody in the hallway. So I sighed and let go the loudest, rumbliest fart I've ever produced. My co-workers probably heard it, but assumed it was a passing semi-truck blowing its horn. My stomach immediately felt better and my belt felt looser. That's how much gas was trapped in there. Satisfied, I turned around to see a woman from a different office standing in the hallway, still holding the door she came from. She wore a look of sheer horror, at once nauseated by my boorish behavior and disgusted with herself for feeling impressed at the magnitude of my flatulence. "Hello," I said, plastering a cheerful smile on my face. And I ran back to my desk and put my hoodie up. I never saw her again, so I just assumed she committed suicide after that day. I was the one getting embarrassed on this occasion. My housemate walked in on me while I was frantically beating off to Pornhub with my headphones on. He wanted to invite me out for dinner and budge into my room without knocking. We locked eyes for a solid few seconds. My hand was on my big dick. I was stark naked, boxer down at my ankles, seated on my chair. Nothing could have been done to avoid that scene other than to take it like a champ and just smile and ask what's up. He managed to utter out an "oops, my bad" for his untimely invitation and closed the door. I was mortified, but I soldiered on to finish the job after he left. We are still friends till this day, and every time we think of the cringe-worthy occasion, we'd have a good laugh at ourselves. But mostly me. During my maturing days as a 14-year-old boy, I had discovered online porn. I mean, really. Who didn't? But was unaware of the browser history being able to be checked by anyone else using the family computer. My interest at the time was a website called myfriendshot.com, which I would frequently visit when trying to release teenage angst. One night at dinner, my parents sat us kids down to talk to us about something very disturbing they found in the browser history and had very serious looks on their faces. Naturally, having grown up in a Christian home with two other brothers, I knew my porn obsession was found out. My parents began to talk to us about violence and their worry about the glorification of violence online etc. Naturally, I was very confused, as this was not the discussion I was expecting. My mother, obviously the more jolted by what she found online, blurted out, "I'm just very worried because someone in this family has been looking at a website called My Friend Shot Mom and it's made me very uncomfortable." I didn't say a ducking word to correct her. Crisis averted. Oh. It was me. I was waiting for an online interview for an internship program, and while the interviewer was away, I remembered I still had my septum piercing on. So obviously I pushed it inside my nose before anyone noticed. As I was adjusting the hidden piercing, the interviewer got online and saw me basically picking on my nose like an asshole. We had an awful 5 seconds of silence before she decided to proceed with the interview like nothing happened. I got the internship and now have to avoid her around the company because she always seems to remember and look at me funny. Whenever my shift is quiet, I take a couple minutes break and go practice doing handstands on the nice grass by our building. I'm awful and can hold it for about 2 seconds before I flip over and land hard on my ass. Last week the security guy offhandedly mentioned there's a CCTV camera that points almost exactly at that location. He's been watching me handstand for about 2 weeks.